In the news tonight, 41 cases recorded in 48 hours. Fijians urged to accept quarantine facilities near them. And FNPF assistance extended on certain phases.
From the studios of FBC Suva, Edwin Nunn.
Bulawanaka, Fiji. 41 cases of COVID-19 were recorded in the past 2 days, with 18 testing positive yesterday and an additional 23 cases today. Ministry of Health Permanent Secretary Dr. James Fong says 9 cases were recorded in Narere, 5 in the Waila cluster, 1 from Wanikoso cluster, 1 from the Navy cluster and 2 from Korodiri in Nandi. Dr. Fong says the 2 in Nandi are linked to each other and are from the Korodiri settlement near Nawaka village, and that is now under lockdown.
The 23 cases today are as follows. 15 are part of the Navy cluster. It includes one who lives in Nantonimai near Lami and 3 along Kalsa. 7 are part of the Waila cluster and 1 is part of the Nandali cluster.
The Permanent Secretary says they've been able to confirm that the 46 cases announced on Friday were linked to known clusters.
The 3 that were under investigation are now known to be from the Navy cluster. Now, this is reassuring in that the cases are all coming from lockdown and screening areas. And our tests that are coming from non-lockdown and non-screening areas remain negative.
And we now join Apanisa Wangairandovu live. Apanisa, 41 cases in 2 days. What sort of response mechanism is the ministry taking as they work towards eliminating COVID-19?
Permanent Secretary for Health, Dr. James Fong, again highlighted tonight that funeral gatherings remains a major concern with regards to the spread of the virus. He also stated that another factor that is promoting the spread of the virus is that many people are gathering in a limited space. This includes large families at home, dormitory-style living, crowded settlement, and also crowded workplace without have to have poor ventilation. Also, Edwin, over 36,885 vaccines were administered from May 24th until yesterday. This is part of the intensive vaccination drive being conducted by the Ministry of Health. Of that number of vaccines that are being administered, over 33,000 were first doses and over 3,000 are having to be their second doses. Also, the Permanent Secretary for Health, Dr. James Fong, says a new shipment of vaccines arrived into the country today, and this will boost their vaccination program. Edwin.
Naka Panisa. A number of infected people have informed the Health Ministry that they've been drinking kava with others in their cluster in recent weeks. Permanent Secretary Dr. James Fong says drinking grog is becoming a significant factor in the spread of the virus. Dr. Fong adds while kava is part of our culture and social life, people must refrain from sharing grog with others from outside their household during this pandemic.
Grog drinking involves close contact with others, drinking out of a common cup, which create perfect conditions for the virus to spread from one person to another.
And the Permanent Secretary for Health is also pleading with the public to accept quarantine facilities in or near their communities. Dr. James Fong says this is an integral part of their strategy to contain COVID-19. He's called on Fijians to help them in their effort as they work to eliminate the virus.
We need to create more quarantine facilities and lockdown areas. I ask that the general public help us by accepting these facilities in or near their communities, and understand that these facilities are as safe as is humanly possible. We have reviewed our quarantine protocols and procedures and mitigated lessons learned from past experiences. Quarantine and isolation facilities are a necessary part of our COVID-19 battle, and we actually need them a lot.
Businesses can't go back to operating in the usual manner as they'll now have to abide by the minimum COVID-safe measures. Businesses in the Nandi Lautoka zone can operate except for high-risk businesses. The Ministry of Commerce, Trade, Tourism and Transport is working on protocols to allow high-risk businesses to open. For the Lami Suva Nosori Containment Zone, only essential and approved businesses are allowed to operate. Permanent Secretary Shaheen Ali says only the North and Maritime Island businesses can all open.
For fellow Fijians living in the North and Maritime Islands, we have now eased restrictions and are allowing all businesses, including high-risk businesses, to open. Of course, this needs to be done in a COVID-safe manner. Our containment measures have been effective enough to keep Vanuatu and our maritime islands safe. However, having no recorded cases should not allow us to become complacent.
The COVID-19 assistance phase 2 and 3 under the Fiji National Provident Fund will be extended as Fiji continues to grapple with the virus. Prime Minister Voreqe Bainimarama says the assistance will be around $40 million and is expected to benefit over 60,000 Fijians. Kritika Kumar reports.
The Prime Minister says this will cost the government directly approximately $21 million, with FNPF releasing $6 million, making it a total of $27 million.
Those who qualified for the one-off $220 payment because they were in a lockdown area will now be able to access two additional payments of $220, in other words, $440 from their FNPF accounts. Government will top up the balance of those with insufficient funds.
Bainimarama says for all those in the informal sector and do not qualify under any other assistance scheme and are not employed will be able to receive a payment of $50.
Under the previous payment scheme, through the money wallets of M-Paisa and MyCash, it was only restricted to households in the containment zones, but under this new scheme, all individuals 18 and above in Vitilevu will qualify. Further information on this scheme will be detailed by Tuesday. We expect that this initiative will cost government directly $10 million, targeting about 200,000 Fijians.
The FNPF has extended the contribution payment deadline for employers to the end of next month. The fund had initially extended the deadline to May 31st. However, given the continued lockdown, employers are being given another month as a grace period. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
There was a lot of movement between the Lami to Nosori corridor today following the merging of the three zones. The three areas are now one containment zone with borders in Wainandoi and Longani. Nandi and Lautoka have also merged into one containment area. Apanisa Wangairandovu went around the central division and files this report.
The three containment borders have been lifted, allowing people to move around.
We will now have one big Lami Nosori containment zone. Within this zone, we will still, however, maintain the existing lockdown areas where we know there are known infections.
Bainimarama says people can now return to work subject to the strict guidelines established by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Commerce.
We know that the Lami Nosori corridor has the highest number of active cases. And we have seen that due to the neglect of COVID-safe measures, there has been an exponential rise in cases. Therefore, movement in this zone must be for specific purposes.
At this point in time, entry and exit out of the Sawani Sere Road remains prohibited. Exchanges are still being done here at the border.
Fijians reacted differently to the merging of containment areas.
Lockdown is open, we are very happy now because we can go Suba, right? Go to Wanga, like to take that job.
It's good in one way because people will return to work, but we have to take care of our health now.
The case is coming up now, so it's not good for the border to open.
With the return of free flow of traffic along this highway, Fijians are being urged to continue practicing safety measures to protect themselves and their loved ones from COVID-19. Apenisa Wangairandovu, FBC News.
Up ahead, some SMEs on the verge of closure. And educator shares his journey to success. Welcome back. The further easing of restrictions around the country is largely dependent on the number of people being vaccinated. The Ministry of Health will roll out a large vaccination drive in Nandi and Lautoka from tomorrow, and it will continue for a few days. Kritika Kumar reports the ministry hopes to administer 260,000 first doses of the vaccine.
The vaccination effort is being ramped up, and the Prime Minister adds the vaccines will continue to arrive with little delay.
Once a significant percentage of the population is vaccinated, we will be able to loosen restrictions quickly, as you have seen happen in other parts of the world. Fiji is not far behind.
Head of COVID-19 Vaccination Task Force, Dr. Rachel Devi, says due to the increasing number of cases, the ministry has seen more people willing to get the jab.
Unfortunately, with the current cases we've been having in the community, it definitely has probably pushed a lot more people to get vaccinated. But honestly, it's only the right decision to get that jab.
Dr. Devi says they will soon be expanding their vaccination reach as well.
As we progress and we get more vaccines and we've got accessibility by planes, etc., and our staff are trained on all the various aspects of this particular vaccine rollout, we intend to go out.
The Prime Minister highlighted last night that vaccination is key to reopening the economy, because if the economy doesn't reopen, then Fijians will not be able to resume normal lives. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
Prime Minister Voreqe Bainimarama says they'll be presenting legislation in Parliament to change enforcement of the COVID-19 emergency. He says as soon as Parliament sits and once passed, the legislation will allow for on-the-spot payment of fines for not wearing masks and businesses not adhering to COVID-safe measures. Bainimarama says it will seek to make businesses equally accountable for non-compliance by employees and customers. This will mean that if any business owner allows patrons into their establishment without masks, it would be penalized as well as the patron, and after more than 3 violations, businesses may be shut down. Some members of the Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation, especially the small and micro businesses, are on the verge of closing down. President Sandeep Chauhan says the second wave of COVID-19 has not spared their members, and discussions are underway with relevant authorities to assist these businesses to reopen and operate safely. Kelly Vadala reports.
Businesses under the Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation have been struggling to stay afloat. Some are barely making the cut.
I would assume a lot of the small micro businesses would be affected. Some would be facing the difficulties of closing down or very close to it. And the sooner we act on this, the sooner we can help, the better it will be, so that, hopefully we can get them to open up.
President Sandeep Chauhan says getting businesses back on track is crucial to the economy.
A lot of the businesses are happy to adhere to the protocols that have been set out so that they can get their people back on track and start employing them and start to manufacture goods which can be then sold through the supermarkets or various stores, So that is the plan for the moment.
The Fiji Chamber of Commerce says businesses need to survive and it cannot keep people on a payroll without earning an income.
The businesses have a responsibility to their employees, as well as their own business. They need income to be able to continue to sustain the expense levels.
Another challenge for members of the Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation is doing business with minimum staff, as many of their employees live within or out of the containment zones. Kelly Vadala, FBC News.
Loitering and drinking continue to top the list for breaches of curfew and health restrictions. 47 cases were recorded over the last 24 hours. 7 farmers of Nakandrundru in Bua were found intoxicated in breach of health restrictions. The Southern Division recorded 22 cases, where 7 were found intoxicated at Dombati. 13 cases were recorded in the Western Division. 9 people were arrested during curfew hours along the Tomuka area in Lautoka and Yalalevu in Ba. The Eastern Division recorded 5 cases, including 3 who were all arrested for drinking kava at Sauva settlement. A 22-year-old farmer entered into the Nosori containment zone from the forced training group. A 25-year-old man was also arrested for driving without a pass during curfew hours. Small and humble beginnings are the launching pad to great endings. Such is the journey of our successful Fijian tonight, who's broken barriers and scaled new heights, except that his journey is just beginning. Koroi Tandulala reports Sivendra Michael is the first Pacific Islander to graduate with first-class honours from the University of Auckland in Masters of Econometrics.
On top there. Almost. There, look up.
Growing up with a humble background in Lautoka serves as an inspiration for 31-year-old Sivendra Michael to break barriers.
My entire life, I grew around big communities, I can say. And for me personally, I always identify myself with those communities because those were my backbone. One of the major challenges was financially, like we were not in a situation where I could take money for recess lunch, things like that.
Determined to make it in life, Michael grabbed every opportunity with both hands, quickly rising through the ranks of success.
I did things like peer mentoring, worked in the academic service, I worked with the residential halls people, so I had a couple of jobs. And one of the reasons why I had to take up the jobs is because I always knew at the back of my mind, I'm in university and it's quite hard to ask someone else for money, or depend on my parents.
Through the course of pursuing his education, Michael's goal changed after spending a semester in the United States under a student exchange program.
It was at that moment where my thinking towards just finishing a degree and getting work had changed. At the age of 24, I joined the UN in a national officer position, and I think at the history of ILO, that is the youngest ever national officer. And I just finished my graduate school.
Michael, who is also a single father, says he draws inspiration from his mom and his daughter, pushing him to achieve all that he could.
I draw inspiration from her because no matter what the challenges were, she was able to send me to school and get me a proper education.
The 31-year-old accomplished educator offering his advice.
When there are opportunities available to you, step up and make the attempt and effort to grab that opportunity.
Michael is currently working as a program specialist at the United Nations Development Program and has also completed his Masters in Governance at the University of the South Pacific. He holds a postgraduate diploma in economics and is currently completing his PhD in Development Studies at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. Koroi Tandulala, FBC News.
Welcome back. Olympic gold medalist Chasavere Malua is working hard to provide the best for his wife and children. It took over a year for an Australian rugby team to beat a New Zealand side. Last night, the Reds stunned the Chiefs 40 points to 34 in round 3 of Super Rugby Trans-Tasman. Suliasi Vunivalu and Filippo Dangunu had a try each for the Reds and Peter Gasoakula for the Chiefs. And Sevu Rees scored a try to help his Crusaders side get a 54-28 bonus point win against the Waratahs in another Super Rugby Trans-Tasman match. The Kaiviti Silktails fell short against Ron Messi Cup defending champions Wentworthville Magpies yesterday. Indiscipline proved to be one of the contributing factors in the 22-10 loss after 2 yellow cards for the Silktails. Maika Serulevu and Samuel Ndaveta were sent off in the first and second half respectively. Centre Inoke Vasutaranga and Malakai Kovekalo scored the Silktails tries. The Silktails will face Gleb Dirty Reds at 4:30 p.m. next Saturday. Fiji Mbati winger Micah Sivo scored a try for the Eels last night, but his side lost 20-38 to the Rabbitohs. However, Parramatta coach Brad Arthur indicated that the decision to shift centre Wanga Blake from the right side to the left was set to become permanent after admitting that his combination with winger Blake Ferguson wasn't working. Generally cloudy conditions and slight showers were experienced over some parts of the country today. In the west, fine morning with a cloudy afternoon eastwards. From Pacific Harbour to Suva, fine weather prevailed with cloudy afternoons as well. In the north, some showers with isolated thunderstorms were experienced in parts of the Kaundrove. At sea, southerly winds 10 to 15 knots, moderate seas. The next high tide is at 10:11 p.m. next, followed by low tide at 4:10 a.m. tomorrow. Sunrise will be at 6:30 a.m. Outlook for tomorrow: expect showers with isolated thunderstorms and possible heavy falls over Vanua Levu and other parts of the country. And for Tuesday, expect coastal sea flooding during high tides over southern parts of Viti Levu. And recapping our main stories, 41 cases recorded in 48 hours. Fijians urged to accept quarantine facilities near them, and FNPF assistance extended on certain phases. For these stories and others, you can tune in to our sister radio station Gold FM. To our poll question this week, we are asking, do you think Fijians are abiding by restrictions to curb the spread of COVID-19? Visit our FBC News website to answer. You can also send us newsworthy pictures and videos. Email fbcnews@fbc.com.fj or share it with us via our various social media accounts, including Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can also download our FBC app to keep updated with the very latest in news and sports and listen to our 6 radio stations live. That's your news this evening. I'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe. Modemanta.